All right, everybody. Good evening. It's a little bit after 7 o'clock. It's Thursday night, but we have specially reserved tonight for conversations with Cougars, and I'm so pleased to have a former classmate of mine, 1 year behind me at school, Carlisle Morris. Carlisle, thank you for your persistence and getting on technology-wise, and it's good to see you after all these years.
Yes, Bernard, it is great to see you after 30-something years.
It has been a while. Shh, don't tell anybody it's been that long. But for guys who weren't in school with Carlisle or don't have the privilege of knowing him, there is not a nicer fella who's come through Northview. I can assure you that. Carlisle was a member of the track program for several years. He later ran at two different colleges, ran track in college at two different schools, and now has for many years had his own lawn care business. Carlisle, I'm so glad that you're here with us tonight. I'm so looking forward to hearing your journey and your stories. But before we jump back to the Wayback Machine, share with folks a little bit about the current Carlisle and his family and what's he doing, and tell us about your business, stuff like that.
Well, I've been in lawn care business for 23 years, and I have a wife. She's here, and we were married 15 years ago. Got to adopt her son, which is my son now. So he's 23 years old, 23 now, and he's going to school and working. And we live here in Dothan, Alabama, and we live on the east side of town in the rural area. So we're just right around the corner from old Northview High School.
Nice. That's excellent. Now, with the weather as unpredictable and as nasty as it is this month, are you able to get out into outdoors and do some work?
I do a little bit according to the weather. Just it's not as busy this time of year. I have another source of income that I do with some investments. So, but most of the time, it's steady. You stay pretty steady. I do it by myself, and I stay pretty steady all the way up through Christmas. So.
Wow. I was going to say, I bet 10 to 11 months of the year you are out and about and busy.
Really been. We will crank up in a couple of months. So it really will.
Well, Carlisle, what neighborhood did you live in during your Northview years and before that? Where did you grow up?
Well, I grew up probably closer to Main Street, closer to the country club. My dad always had a rule. We had to live in the Garden District close to the country club, because if his car broke down, he could get to the country club and walk. Yeah. So.
Awesome. Very good.
But no, I grew up, my neighbors were Jamie Holman and Chris Lee lived right down the street from me. So.
Well, sure, on Osceola.
Yeah, right off Osceola. It was called West North then. Now it's Chickasaw.
Gotcha. Yeah, my grandparents were on North Orange, not too far from there. That's for sure. Well, Carlisle, where'd you go to elementary school, junior high, middle school?
Well, I started out at Northside Methodist. I started out at Hurd and then went to Northside. And then, I realized that I wanted to run track somewhere. I always had that. I've always wanted to play football and baseball and all that stuff, but I had a blood condition, which is hemophilia. I'm missing factor 9 in my blood. So, the doctors always said you can't play contact sports, but you can play non-contact. So track was one of those. And I wound up 7th grade year at Northside transferring to Honeysuckle Middle School. And that's where I learned, going over there, running coach for the legendary Coach Jenkins at the time. And, I didn't really know how to run. He taught me how. And my dad ran a lot, but he said that there's going to be boys that probably run faster than 6-minute mile. And I thought, I've never done that in my life. So, the first day of practice was rough because I took a jog around he had little spikes out on the little field. It was a field, and he had little little wooden spikes spiked in, and you had to know there was a 220-yard track. So we had to run 16 of those to get a mile. And I remember jogging my first loop. Coach Jenkins said, "We're going to be out here all day with you guys. Y'all running about a 12-minute pace. That ain't going to cut it." So I was introduced to speed work, and I was introduced to the things there. So that's where I went. And then I went to Northview 80.
Well, clearly your love of sport is beyond track. I know that you probably have been or attended more football, baseball, basketball games than any three Northview students combined. But before we get into that, Carlisle, Shirley C, of course, says to tell you hello.
Hey, Miss C. I tell you, if you ever needed a school mom, Shirley was to the T. And I've got a story about Shirley. And I went to church with Shirley, so we always had to be on our best behavior. So, but she was the ultimate person. If you needed anything, she was always there.
Yeah, that's the highest compliment. That's for sure. Want to say hello to Josh Andrews, Faye Flowers Phillips, and we've got a few other folks. And guys, we're talking with Carlisle Morris. Carlisle, when he wasn't running 12-minute miles in junior high, he was learning the art of cross country, of track and field. But let's step away from that for just a minute, and let's talk about the other sports. Let's talk about your first exposures, whether it was as a fan, going to games, whether it's high school, college, whatever. Even though you weren't able to play contact sports, did you ever play touch football or ever play basketball or anything else?
Yeah, I played a lot of touch football growing up. Chris Lee and those guys, the neighborhood guys, Jamie Holman, we always would get together, play something, and always in the neighborhood. Whether you would, that was back in the day. You could go out early in the day and then come back before supper. That's just the way it was. You stayed out all day, and a lot of football, a lot of baseball in the backyard. So,
well, transitioning from middle school over to Northview, did you know you were going to run track? Was that already? Had you already been introduced to Coach Griffin by your middle school coach?
No, Coach Jenkins was, a little older at the time, but took an interest in what you did, and that he pretty much left it up to you if you were going to go on into high school. But by the time before I graduated, I was able to run about a 5:45 mile. So by my 8th grade year, but probably, I know that some of the guys over there, I know Mark Saffold, one of your guys that played on the Northview, the other Saffold played too.
Mickey was
he was a high jumper. It's really good. I think Mark Saffold did that. He was one that came over. Some of the other guys, most of those guys went to Dothan High School that I ran track with there, and then came over to Northview. And I really didn't know coming over there, learning. I had brothers. I had my brother I had a brother there that was behind me, and then I had a brother that was he graduated in '83. So just making a transition, it was just going to a big high school was intimidating. So I didn't think track started till spring. So I waited. I finally went to my guidance counselor. And I said, "Look, I want to run track." She said, "Well, you go down there to the gym and find out what you need to do. And we'll get you switched to 6th period. That's the way it works." So I went down there, and the first thing I did, I think I just was taking regular PE, and I walked in, and I went to Coach Parrish's office. I said, "Hey, Coach Parrish, my name's Carlisle Morris, and I want to find out about track team. I want to run." He says, "Well, I want to tell you something. Track is not going to be easy. And if you're just looking to get a credit, don't expect to get a credit, because you're going to work the tail off. You come run. You understand me?" I said, "Yes, sir. I understand. I ran it honeysuckle. I'm just He said, "I know that Coach Griffin's the coach. I just need to find out what to do." And he called him Barry Frost. And Barry was one of those guys, you know, that ran the roads a lot, put the work in. The guys that came before me, you know, Bernard, I could go on. The guys that came before me gave me, you know, gave great tools for distance runners. You had Jock Carroll, you had Kenny Banks that went on and was an All-American at Troy in the 800. You had guys that all those guys that came before me that ran distance. There was a few others. There was Ronnie Dipe. There was a few others, and they taught Coach Griffin. You know, he would drive them in a car and drive them out to Headland, way on out past Headland. And he said, "How far y'all want to go?" This was stories I heard. He said, "Well, almost to Abbeville, Coach," and he would drop them off and they would run back to school.
Wow. So, on the side of the highway. Amazing.
On the side, yes. You know, you couldn't do that today.
No.
We were, I was it was a great time, and I was in the right place. And I met Coach Griffin, and I talked to him about a mile a minute, and he said, "All right, just calm down. We'll get you signed up. We'll see but you hang around with Barry. He'll show you what to do." And, you know, Barry really taught me the ropes my 9th grade year. And I can remember those guys that I ran with my first year, and I would sit and watch those guys run sprints, the sprinters, from the field events, from all the ones that Bernard, one thing that Northview had, you know, Coach Griffin pulled us in a room every year. And I remember we would meet every January, and he would tell us that, you know, "I'm not here to take y'all down the road and run against your peers. We're not going to get better running against them. I'm going to take you to Florida, and I'm going to take you to Georgia. And my goal is to get you ready for sectionals, because you want those, any of you that run relays, you want those inside lanes, those 4 lanes. You wanted to have those lanes when you went to the state meet." And, you know, I didn't qualify for state meet till I was a senior, but I set a goal. And I think our purest guy that could have been the best. Now, Barry was a 430 miler, 427 miler. He had gotten hurt his senior year some, so he tried to get his knee fixed, and it didn't quite heal right. But he had a scholarship to Troy if he could run it there if he wanted to. And you know, so, but I think in my class, I think if a guy that really wanted to do it, and, you know, he's passed away, but Roger Mills was the city champion when we were in middle school, and he went to Beverly, and he ran a 430 mile his freshman year
in 9th
or
grade.
lower in 9th grade. And he brought the medal to school. We all saw that. And I think if he solely worked on that, he could have run anywhere in the country he wanted to. I think he could have run probably a 410 by the time he graduated, but he wanted to play football, and I don't blame him. And he started running the 800. He just had talent. Some kids just had talent.
Yeah.
You know,
and some of those names you've mentioned, Ronnie and Sam Dye grew up. They were in my neighborhood, of course, a few years older than me. But Barry Frost lived next door to me for 10 years. We grew up next door to each other.
I tell you, Barry knew running. Barry knew the ropes. I think that he was pretty much my inspiration then to work with me. He knew all the workouts they left for Coach Griffin. We used those workouts. And I can remember Barry telling me, "You know, Carlisle, we ran to Headland one day, came back by the old Cougar." You know, they ran 12 miles. They came back to the track and ran 4 to 6 800s under 215.
Crazy.
They
Carlisle, I gotta ask, one of the legendary things, and I don't know who started it, but we all saw it, were guys putting in the road work wearing combat boots. Were you a combat boot wearer? Do you know about that tradition?
Yes, I knew about the tradition. Those were the guys who ran the 800 or the 400 meters. And it would build their calves up, but it would also build they did it. And, those guys were running cadence. It's like an ROTC format,
Right.
but they didn't really just run hard when they were out running on the roads, but they did it to build up, to be able to have the endurance in the sprint speed for the 800.
Well, sure. I knew there had to be a method to that. I'm not going to call it madness, but they wouldn't just be running in those boots just for people to see them. But I always thought that was quite unique, but never knew any of the origin or the reason why they were doing that. But,
today we can considered an old training method. But
the
heavier shoe you wore, then you put on a pair of spikes. We never trained spikes much at the track because it was just hard country.
Yeah.
But when you went to other meets, if you went to Florida, you went to Georgia, you had some tracks that were rubberized and they were very, very nice. Opelika had a pretty nice track too. So,
guys, one of the things that you may or may not know about Carlisle, in addition to being an athlete himself, he was also a true fan, just all things Northview. And many, many practices, when he would finish his workouts, he'd hang around and watch the football team because he had tons of buddies on the team. In addition to his neighbors, Jamie Holman, Chris Lee, and others, there were so many other guys, Bobby Estes, Shane Wood, I could go on, that whether you knew them from church or from school or both or neighborhood, I always thought that was really cool. And we appreciated any and all support, but most specifically, folks, and there weren't many as dedicated as you, but I want you to talk about that a little bit, Carlisle. I know that you've always loved football, but your support was really next level, and it was very much appreciated and recognized.
Well, sure. Again, like I go back and talk about my 9th grade year, I'd watch Woo Woo Park, Jonathan Parker. I graduated with brother Chris, and great athletes. We had Lynn Brown. She went on to be an All-American at Troy. We just had superior, and they worked hard. You had Jonathan Parker on, you had Woo Woo on. I saw that interview, and one of the things that he mentioned was hard work, and I think every athlete did that. You guys did it. Baseball did it. Basketball, golf, they all put the work in. Whatever it was, the cheerleaders, I tell you, they had 3 or 4 different jobs, making banners and getting you guys ready, then doing a pep rally, then going to the cheer game.
Oh yeah, it's the stuff that whether it's band, football, any sport,
yes.
You don't see the hours. No one sees the hours that the athlete, puts in when no one is there, when there's no cheering, when there's no lights, when there's no competition. You can be born with all the God-given talents in the world, but if you don't develop it, you're not going to last very long or be successful very long, because no successful athlete, no matter what the sport or the level of competition, is ever going to be on top very long without putting in all of that time that we never see. Just like the many miles that you put in, it doesn't matter. It's whatever sport. If you're going to be a competitor, you got to put it in.
And here's the thing, Bernard, it didn't really start my 9th grade year. It started more my 10th grade year. We got a guy from Sweden who transferred in, and he was a track athlete.
Mm-hmm.
And he was just a good athlete. He ran several events. But one thing he did, he incorporated weight training. And so I picked up on that.
Mm-hmm.
We'd go lift weights. Coach Parrish would let us use the weight room then. And then, I'd go work out, or I'd go after my run, and I'd hang out after football, watch a little bit of football practice before I went home. And, I went to church with Shane and Bobby, and we talked about it some there. But just to see all you guys, I can remember the coaches yelling. I can still remember Coach Ragsdale. I'd be finishing up a workout on the track my junior or senior year, and he could set the tone. You remember when he would say, all right, we're going to have a great day. We're going to have a great day. Let's get right. Let's get our attitude right.
And that's right. And his voice would get a little higher and a little higher.
Yes.
And the more animated he got so high. I used to get a little on the inside. I get a little tickled. I didn't want to show that because he was really trying to make his point, but he was a heck of a motivator and had a great coaching and administrative career. He ended up in Trinity in Montgomery. And I think he's now in the Alabama High School Athletic Association.
Yes, he is. He is. And, you know, he was in charge of FCA. And, you know, that's another thing I'll talk about, Bernard. You know, my personal relationship with Christ, I came to know the Lord in the 10th grade, and that just changed forever. And I tell you, I got closer to Coach Griffin. I really did. You know, if there was ever a guy or ever a coach that took time to invest in you, that was Coach Griffin. Because I spent a lot of time with him, Bernard, a lot of time during the off season. Even in football, I'd go out there. He would instruct his guys what to do. Come over and see me and say, all right, what is your plan? What do you want to do? And I'd tell him, I said, well, I'm working out, doing this. He said, keep that up. He said, you might want to run a road race or two, you know, because we didn't have a cross country program. So, you know, he left that up to me, but you trained all year round. Yeah. And I can remember going in the summers working out, and I got closer to Coach Griffin. I mean, to Coach Parrish as it went on. I mean, you know, Coach Parrish didn't have to do this for me, but he said, hey, you go in that locker room and you share a locker with one of the football players. Go ahead and do that. Tell them what I said. And I went in and told them they let me have a locker. And, you know, it was nice if you worked during the summer and then you would come in the evenings and I'd work out on my own some and then wait around, and then the guys all ran sprints, and Coach Parrish said, hey, come out here to the track and run with us. It'll be good for you. Get your turnover in. Get on. So I did that a lot my junior and senior year. And I can remember Clark Lopez saying, hey, Carlisle, I've got to get in shape. I need you, you know, just to build my legs up and work. I need to run quarters with you, or 600. I need to do
That's
your track.
The picture I posted from the yearbook. Y'all running.
We did it a lot, and you know, Clark was just one of just a genuine guy. You know, Bernard, if you look at that class, your class and our class, the talent that was there, how many Division I or Division II or just NAIA and junior college scholarships that were signed out of that class? There was a ton of them.
Yeah. There certainly was. Guys, I'm talking with Carlisle Morris. Carlisle was class of 87. He ran track for Northview all those years and was a huge supporter of the football program. And we're going to get to that in just a few minutes. But you briefly touched on something that I'm always interested to hear about, how your faith influenced your athleticism, influenced your competition and your drive. Some people don't rely upon faith at all for that. They keep it separated. Some people don't have a faith that they even need in their regular life. Other people, it's incredibly important. One of the top 2 or 3, if not the number 1 thing for them. So if you don't mind, Carlisle, share a little bit about how your faith impacted your ability as an athlete and vice versa. How did you rely on them?
Well, you know, Bernard, it taught me to set goals, put me goal oriented. A lot of times I would leave, try to get up early in the morning, get a shower, eat a little breakfast, get in my car, get to school before anybody else did, sit in that parking lot, I'd read the Bible, and I'd pray, you know, just for students, whatever. And then started my day and worked through it, and went to class, you know, lunch. I always ate a salad at lunch because I knew was going to run, and I didn't want to have a full stomach, except for Friday. Friday was the easier run. So I would always eat pizza and the fries and the pink lemonade, or just regular lemonade.
$1.25 right there. Best lunch in town.
It really was. If we ate it today, we would probably have a heart attack in a minute. So
It'd be served with a side of Lipitor, that's for
yeah,
sure.
yes. But sorry,
That's
lost you.
okay.
Okay, can you still hear me and see me?
I can hear you, but can't see you
Okay.
right now. You're off screen, but that's okay.
Let me see what I can get in.
There you
Can you hear
go.
me?
Well, you went away
Okay,
again.
yeah. All right. Try something again, but
All right, there we go. You're back with it now. You went away again.
I'll just talk to you this way.
That's okay. You can come back on whenever.
Okay, but no, I just know that Bernard, it was depending on just being dependent on Jesus to get me through everything I needed to do. It just made life a little easier. It wasn't difficult. I wasn't the smartest student. I had to overcome some things and mainstream back into some regular classrooms. But Bernard, I'll tell you, Northview we were privileged to go to a school. We were blessed to go to a school that gave us tools, gave us a great athletic director, that gave us a great coaches. I mean, incredible coaches. We were able to use that later on in life, and it paid off huge dividends.
I was gonna say they really gave us a foundation. And what we did with that foundation was largely up to us, whether it was being in athletic competition or academically or socially, whatever it was. But you're so right. There was a great foundation there. Carlisle, let's get away from track for a minute. Let's get away from faith and FCA, and let's talk about football. Let's talk about Friday nights for you at Rip Hughes or wherever you were with the team.
Bernard, one of the things that I would do on a Friday afternoon, if I was coming home from school, or in the summer, I'd cut the yard, our yard. We had a pretty good sized yard. Mm-hmm. I'd cut it with a, push lawnmower, walk behind it. And man, if it was around August, late August, September, I would even race home from school after I ran and try to cut the grass. And part of the routine was get to Rip Hughes Stadium, no matter what. Get there early. You couldn't forget those speeches by Principal Smith.
That's right.
It is amazing. He never had anything prepared.
But he challenged us, didn't he?
He did. He just did. And I got to tell you, the pep rallies, Bernard, the year that we won the state championship, and if I can get to see you again, I had some stuff to show you. But
we can pause just a second, and you can find the video function to start. There we go. You went away again.
Yeah, it was trying to get on, so see if I can find. But anyway, I don't want to lose conversation.
That's okay.
Anyway, they we were able to.
You're talking about on Fridays going to the pep rallies and how much fun that were.
You could just, the spirit, when there was something when y'all beat Enterprise. Remember the game? I'll tell you, Bernard, I went to every game except the Enterprise game and the Robert E. Lee the second time in the state final. Because when I ran a lot, if I didn't care if it was snowing, raining, whatever, I ran whenever it was convenient, and it didn't matter what the weather was.
Yeah.
And my dad said, if you go to the game tonight, you're going to sit out there in that cold, damp weather and you won't be able to run next week. And I didn't want to miss running. So I just said, all right. So, but by the time we beat Enterprise and came to school that night, I think that game was played on a Thursday night. And we got in Friday the next day. The school spirit kicked up a notch. We hadn't beaten Enterprise in a long time.
That's right.
I mean, it was,
It was a special time to be
Oh,
in that time period. It certainly was. Carla, we got a few folks who've dropped in. I want to make sure that we recognize them. Jason Mullins, one of your classmates, Ben Ernest.
yes.
Oh, Shirley C has got a great story. We're going to get to that in just a few minutes, Miss C. So don't worry about that. Sean Myhand is watching with us. So thank you, guys. I'm talking with Carlisle Morris. We're running through right now the 85 season, Carlisle's junior year, my senior year. And just the pep rallies were so magical because there was so much school spirit. But Carlisle, I want you to take us to you getting to the stadium at Rip Hughes on Fridays. Did you have buddies that you would come over with? Did you just?
No, I drove. Let me tell you, Bernard, my routine was to park in the back, way in the back, you know, where our home side was.
Mhm.
And because I wanted to be the first one, I wanted to congratulate y'all after the game and sprint to the parking lot and get out and get home quick so that I could watch WTVY and Al Roberts highlights. Remember
There you
those?
go. Oh yeah. Oh
I
yeah.
just wanted to get home and see that. You know, those were, I would always sit in the student section, and I can remember fans. And, man, the band we had was just incredible. You know, I know one of the guys that you graduated with, Calvin Bottoms, he and I were pretty tight friends. And, you know, I thought Calvin was the best musician that ever came through Dothan, you know, because he could play guitar, you know, especially electric guitar, you know.
Very talented fella.
So, but we always thought that was cool. And but
Well, one of the great things about those years, Carlisle, was how crowded the stands were. The student section was full, the band was loud, you know, all of those things, and there was so many people on our side, and we fed on that. It was it couldn't help but help us. And being underneath the stadium in the home locker room, just feeling the energy. I know from the stands y'all were creating it. It had to have been so much fun.
you know, the intensity of what it felt like. Bernard, it was there at the pep rally too. You remember when people would stomp their feet? You could feel the whole gym shake. You could the whole gym would just rattle.
Yeah.
It was that loud. And I don't mean kids, I'm talking teachers, faculty, everybody they were into it.
Well, I got a fun story I want you to share. Let's talk about, first of all, the going up as a student, as a fan, going up to Birmingham to the state title game. What do you remember about that?
Gosh, it was just, that was an incredible day getting there you know, and seeing half of Dothan there. You felt like the whole town was there with it.
That's
right.
Know. That's right.
But man, I mean, you know, I think just remember Huffman scoring first and then coming back. But I have to, it kind of goes back. I have to kind of bring it in, you know, when we were going through the playoffs. You know, I missed the game, but I had some things I wanted to show you. I stayed home and recorded the game off of the radio, and I still have the tapes from that.
Oh wow!
And had a 1984 Northview Cougar city champs, and on the side of the sleeve says "Coke is it," you know. And then, of course, I had my Northview track T-shirt too from the day.
Well, we'll get photos from you after this, and I'll post them in the group.
Yeah, they had most of the time, Bernard. It was. I just remember games. The first game of the year, you know, we were the league game, and lost that game, and you know, I was a little down after that game too, going back to the house. But I remember hearing the song by Brian Adams. You remember "Summer of '69"?
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
That was probably the theme for the whole fall. But you know, those games, and I think, you know, I think one of the games I traveled to that was regular season was it Was it Fairhope that we played? Was that in the semi?
We played Fairhope at home that year in the playoffs,
Okay.
but we played at Foley during the
Yes.
regular season.
And I can remember, and let's see, Harry Stanley got hurt in that game, and shoulder popped out. But he was another great track athlete. Guy could just run straight up and down.
Yeah, he and his sister Ramona both were on the track.
I gave them a ride home almost every night after each meet. I'll tell you more about that. But they, just that game stood out to me. And but all the playoff games when we played, we had to. Who was it in the semifinal? It was
we played
Fairhope.
Opelika. We played Opelika, then we played Central Phoenix City.
Yeah.
Then Fairhope, then the second Robert E. Lee game, and then Huffman.
Yeah. Well, that Fairhope game, it came down to Clark kicking that field goal.
Yeah.
And there were people in the stands.
Kind of rainy, muddy weather.
Yeah, and he had missed 2 or 3 that night. And we lined up, and they, the students were, oh no. I said, no. I stood up and said, he's going to make it. He's going to make it. And I said, y'all get behind him. And he made it.
He sure did. He sure did.
So,
Carlisle, let's
state championship game where I think Huffman got out and scored. Crowd was a little quiet, but that play where Bobby broke in, busted it, and Aristotle Kirkland picked it up and ran it back. That's one of those plays that just stand in your mind forever. You never forget that.
Well, to me, that is the #1 most memorable play in the history of the program in the 41 years, because it completely changed the tone of the state championship game.
Well,
they were driving for their second touchdown in the first quarter, and they were inside the red zone, now called the red zone, but they were inside the 20 when Bobby blew up that play, and Aristotle's in the right place at the right time, and nobody was going to catch number 8. And he went, I think, 91 yards for pay dirt, and that changed the whole tone of the game.
Bernard, it did, and our crowd came alive, and it just seemed like y'all got in a rhythm, and y'all never got out of that rhythm. We scored again and again, and we weren't used to you guys scoring that many points.
We weren't either. We weren't used to being up by 3 touchdowns at half, but we scored three touchdowns in the end of the first and into the second quarter or half, including the final play of the first half.
Yeah, and Coach Parrish played every player that was out there from 10th grade on to 12th.
Well, that absolutely was one of his goals in the second half, is to make sure that every player dressed out was going to have a little bit of playing time during the state title game. That's absolutely true.
And not too many high schools get to do that. Not too many colleges get to do that. I think what got into Huffman's mind, they were so excited about being #1 J.O. Johnson. They were ranked in the country too, and they were so excited about beating them that I think they just overlooked, and that was like winning the state championship for them. So, but I'm glad we won.
When you got back to Dothan, I want you to tell everybody what you and Shane and Bobby and Miss C went and did that night.
It was a Sunday night. I wish I would have gone back to the school on Saturday night just to see you guys. I didn't think anything about it. We got in late too, and we went home. It was cold. But,
it was freezing. It was very cold.
We kept the newspapers though. But the Sunday night, Shirley came over and she said, "Hey, I'm going to change the marquee. I've got the keys. We can get in. Let's change the marquee. Let's put up Northview 85 state champ so everybody can drive in and see that tomorrow." And we got there, and I think I can't remember if Bobby went or not, but I know Shane did. And we were changing that marquee sign, and something kept poking Shane in the tail. And he said, something's taking. I said, well, no, it ain't me. So it was a bush. It was a bush that was poking right in. So we got out of that. So,
That's
but,
fun.
we had a blast changing that sign, telling stories, having a good time. I'll never forget that. That's something that it was very cold, but we didn't care. And that's a memory you just don't forget.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Carlisle, what, after that's your junior year, that's the top of the mountain as far as football is concerned in Alabama, 6A state champs. How did, if any, of that momentum from that team's success help you guys with the track program?
Well, I'll tell you, Bernard, my goal was to get to state, and it took 3 tries, but I finally did it. But my junior year, I missed going to state by 1 place. But let me just tell you, I think I had more fun my junior year.
Mhm.
And I know my senior year was probably my ultimate year because that's where I qualified. But the team camaraderie, just your class and my class together, and the guys in the 10th grade and some 9th graders, we had a blast. I mean, Bernard, like I said, Coach Griffin, if I ever had trouble in practice, said, look, I'm not hitting my time. What's wrong with me? And he would always point. He'd always point to his head. So you not think, you need to think what you're doing. And I can remember, one time, I think it was either my sophomore year or whatever. My dad had to take me to school that morning, and we always ran our meets on Saturday morning. So if we're going to Columbus, we had to be there at 6:30. We had to be there at 7, get on the road. And Coach Griffin would always say, hey, the bus is going to be rolling at 7. It's not leaving it at 7. It's rolling at 7.
Yeah.
So I will leave you. And I can remember getting there, and it was 7. It just turned 7, and the bus was going. And I sprinted up the hill to get on the bus because the guy stopped at the stop sign. I got on. Coach Griffin looked at me. He said, "I'd have left you, Morris. I'd have left you."
Well, I was going to say, if anything, he was a man of his word, wasn't he?
Yes, he was. And I mean, he really was. And, but the conversations we had just was just incredible. And he would always encourage you. Always. I learned probably more life lessons under Coach Griffin than anybody I ever had.
Well, I was just getting ready to say, Carlisle, you touched on something. You can, and one of the fellas, one of your classmates, one of my teammates, Michael Henry, just joined us. Hey, Coach, always good to see you.
Mike Henry, yes.
You can be born with all of God's gifts from an athletic standpoint. But as Coach Griffin pointed out to you, and so many other coaches have pointed out to athletes, it's up here is where your success really comes from. It's the ability to think through. It's the ability to turn off extraneous issues. It's the ability to focus. And I got to believe that as a track athlete, you had to have that as much as any other skill that you needed in your sport. What did you learn from Coach Griffin or any of your other maybe college coaches along the way from that aspect of being an athlete that has then transcended into adulthood?
Oh, hard work. Can you hear me?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Just the way he lived his life. He didn't have to say a whole lot. I look back, Bernard, Coach Parrish never had to give me a locker. Coach Parrish never had to, he encouraged me. He always taught me he said, Carl, I want you to visualize how to think. Well, I said, Coach, I don't do that. He said, try it. Just try it. Visualize you coming across. There's nothing wrong with that. Just visualize you running a race and winning.
Yeah.
And Coach Griffin take from just spiritually he was always pushing me to do better. And I'm going to tell you, Coach Griffin never gave you anything. You earned it. I didn't get anything my freshman year or sophomore year for running at all. In 1986, I got voted track captain on the team. And I have those trophies, Bernard. I still have them. Those are the only ones I kept. And out of all my running career. And because you earned those. You earned them. And Coach Griffin told me after the banquet, he told me, he said, you know what, Carlisle? I wasn't going to give you nothing. But you earned that captain. So I wasn't giving you anything. You know that, don't I? I said, yes, sir. But he was trying to keep me motivated.
I was going to say, that's high praise from Coach Griffin.
Yeah, to not get a big head for next year. Yeah. And I took that and I set my goals and I worked hard that senior year. I came in and I was ready because it hurt. I'll tell you, there was one time hard. We had a meet in Auburn and it was a 2-day meet. So he was going to leave at 11 o'clock on a Friday and take the guys and go to the meet. Well, they decided to eat lunch and he had me going on Saturday because my event was then. Mm-hmm. Well, those guys were in the lunchroom. I said, hey, why aren't you guys out there? Oh, we got time. I said, man, y'all need to get out there. They had missed the bus. He left them. And they were so mad. He took 3 people up there to the meet in Auburn on a Friday. Wow. And they ran everything. Oh, it was hilarious.
Well, that's life lessons.
It was. And, you know, the next day everybody went. But Coach Griffin said, hey, I mean what I say. Mm-hmm. Y'all need to learn to listen to what I say when we're leaving, when we're going to do. But, you know, here's a guy that took his time from family and he could have been with them on Saturdays and gave up a lot of Saturdays. Yeah. I've seen him give up, you know, take money from his own pocket and buy people who couldn't get a meal at McDonald's. If there was ever a man who would drive a bus 3 hours to go to a meet all day long and then drive home with us. We became close. We became a family. And I can remember David Hogan and Harry Stanley. And let me just say this, Bernard. You know, in those relays, you have a certain time to receive the baton. A lot of it's on timing. And I can remember he's in my senior year, I think, we were at Columbus Relays or junior. Somewhere we had a mischange on the exchange from the baton, and it went flying in the air. And boy, we were like, oh, you know, I was sitting in the stands watching that. Mm-hmm. And, you know, they got back the next week and worked on that and never dropped it again. So you got to get it exchanged in the right hand because you're flying coming in, and you only have a 10-yard window to get that baton off. So that was something that I never forgot either. So, but coming down to my senior year and going to open, they changed from the sectionals from. We didn't run at Lee anymore. We were going to Opelika, and that was the first time because they had gotten a new track. And it was a full. You were out in the open, full sun, so you had to stay out of the sun. So I sat on the bus and try to hang out between the bus. It was extremely hot because this was the first part of May, or the end of April, so it was warm. And you know, top 4 goes to state in your event. So I finished 3rd in the 2-mile, and I was just excited to qualify. And I felt like I accomplished a goal. That was one of the goals. I'd met it, accomplished it. Now I got blistered at the state meet, but you know, I realized I woke up real quick. You know, there was a guy, I saw a guy that was in because the 5A and 6A ran together, and there was a guy.
Where were those meets held? That
was, you know, the state championship was always held in Selma, Alabama, but they don't do that anymore. They let their stadium go down. they let that track go to waste. And that was
I know
a shame.
Memorial, I know that stadium because my girls ran track at their high school. And at the time, because they had split with the large divisions and the small divisions, I've
Right.
been to that's a historic Memorial, I don't know, Memorial Stadium, I think.
Yeah, they wouldn't let you, if football teams played on it, they would put a carpet out for them to walk on. They would never let anybody touch that track.
Yeah,
And
that's
it was
historic track.
immaculate. It was immaculate.
So
And
your
it was
senior
not,
year, that's where it was held?
that's where it was. And
Mhm.
on into the probably early 90s, and then they changed it. They started going to Mobile, and then they started going to other places.
Right, right.
But I can remember watching a guy run a 4:13 mile, and he had a scholarship to Auburn. And the guy that won the 2 mile in our had a scholarship to Auburn.
Hmm.
But you know, Bernard, when you go to college, you realize high school's fun. In college, it's business, and it's stuff you don't let mama come to practice in college. Okay, you don't
No,
do that.
you're so right. There's such a huge difference in high school
Oh,
sports and college sports. Carlisle, we've got just a minute or two left, and I've got one more thing to go with you. But I sure appreciate, even though we don't have you on screen right now, I've enjoyed our conversation and learning a little bit of your journey and the impact that so many friends and people that had on you, and that you obviously had on so many growing up. So this has been fun for me.
Bernard, I just want to say this. Thank you for what you do. I mean, you're giving your time when you could be probably doing some other work, because I know your work is never done, with networking and business, and people don't understand attorneys do a lot of work.
Well,
I
thank you.
just appreciate what you're doing. And I appreciate you putting this together, because this is an incredible thing. It's a really way to reconnect. And what I'll say this, Bernard, what I learned from Northview, I was able to take through college. Went 1 year and walked on at Andrew Junior College. You know, I wasn't in the top 7 there or anything, but I got to run 7 meets and do that. I really didn't have any goals to run in college. I didn't think I could do it. Coach Griffin said, you know, Carlisle, you'll pull your shoes out and dust them off every now and then and go take a stroll. You'll be good. But I really wanted to go somewhere. And so I walked on at Andrew College. I met the coach through a road race, and then was able to run there for a year. And then the next year, I transferred to Troy and walked on, and I had 2 years eligibility. I ran cross country, and there you ran twice a day. You ran in the morning and you ran in the afternoon. And we had a pretty tough coach, and he got after us. And if you ran bad, he didn't wait till Monday to chew you out. He dog cussed us on Tuesday when we did our speed workout, and he meant business. And that's why I say college is a business, but you know, it's a different fraternity. And I'll share this story with you, Bernard, before we go. You know, Willie Banks was one of those guys that, you know, he won a state championship at on your team. He was on that 85 state championship team. He was playing football at Troy. He won a Division II football championship there. So he had 2 rings within 2 years. So. But his brother came by, Kenny, and I remember Kenny running with us in the 9th grade, coming home from Troy and telling the stories. And he would run with us and leave us. And but I get a knock on my door, and it's Kenny. And he said, "Hey man, I just wanted to come by and wish you well. And remember, you are part of a family at Northview, but you're now continue to be a family here at Troy. So keep up the good work." You know, he didn't have to do that, but that's how it is, Bernard. everybody, all the athletes.
Yeah.
I look at Michael Henry from our class. I mean, my gosh, he was playing back then you could play an inter squad baseball game, and I was walking back from practice, and I walked over there. There was Michael Henry after the game standing by third baseline, and I went over and I said, "Hey, Mike," he said, "Carlisle Morris." So we talked for a long time, but you never forget who, you never forget those connections.
No, you're so right. It all comes back to your time in high school. We all have such fond memories. But Carlisle, thank you, bud, for sharing your stories with us tonight. I've truly enjoyed our time together. Thank you.
Thank you, Bernard, and you take care.
Guys, as we do most Wednesdays, and we'll be back next Wednesday with conversations with Cougars. You guys be safe. Have a good weekend. Take care.